Annyeonghaseyo. Hello, Bhagwati. Soy Scott, from Water Arts. Welcome to episode 2 of my standing meditation. I've been getting some pretty good feedback lately about doing another episode on standing meditation. So here it is. I hope you enjoy. So one of the things that I like to first talk about with standing meditation is the idea of how we connect YinYang with Tai Chi and WuJi. Now, those three key ideas and principles are very big in developing and understanding your own practice. So when we think about yin-yang, we think about the circular symbol with the black and white dot, and then the opposite black and white dot with the that fills in the area. Now, the idea between yin-yang is that all things, whether it's living or non-living, it's always going through a change, a transformation. And sometimes that change and transformation takes millions of years. Like when you look at like a mountain or earth elements, those things take lots of time to change, but they are still slowly changing as we speak. It may be small. And then with humans, we tend to, sometimes our transformation is a little slower, and then sometimes transformation comes in a big wave. But with yin yang, the idea is that there's this constant change, a transformation of energies that are constantly at play within yourself, within your surroundings, and we interact with each other. And how we perceive those interactions is kind of up to us. You know, we can try and see the good in all things, or we can see the bad in all things. And for me, I tend to try and stay a little more positive, and even if it's a bad thing, I tell myself, well, I can learn from that. So yin-yang is transformation. The idea of yin-yang within Tai Chi philosophy is Tai, the first symbol, means a great exercise, a great human exercise. Ji stands for rigid poles. And the way that we explain in Eastern philosophy, the way that we look at all living things and non-living things, is there's two polar ends to it. Poles, think the North Pole of the Earth, South Pole of the Earth. And when you think of a pole, you think of just maybe a straight line. And then when you add rigid pole, a rigid pole is kind of similar to a tree, but trees can bend. Trees have a certain bending to them. So with Tai Chi, it's an exercise that teaches you how to understand your polar areas. So like up here, this is my upper pole, my lower pole is down here. Everything in between, that's what we're concerned about. One other thing about polar ends, when you look at your bone structure and your muscle structure and your neurological nerve endings, they all have a beginning and an end. Your bones, your insertion points, your ligaments, muscles, tendons, they all have a beginning and an end. A pole and a pole. Now in Tai Chi, what we look to do is to learn how to add dimension to those poles. So when you think of just a linear pole, it's just straight up and down. Now with Tai Chi philosophy, we learn how to bend those poles. We learn how to bend them without breaking. We learn how to change them. And so I'm not saying that we break our bones, but the idea is if you have a brittle, hard, rigid bone, it can break. You know, it can break easier. If you are more flexible, think of that saying with the bamboo. The stiff branch that gets blown by the wind breaks easily, whereas a bamboo, it's rigid, but it can still flex. It can still move. So when the wind is blowing it, it's not gonna break. And how we relate that to ourselves is our bones, our muscles, they all have these polar ends. What we're looking to do is be flexible within those confines. And what that does to us is it adds three-dimensional. We're already three-dimensional, but with your thinking, some people are very linear with their thinking. They can only think straight and forward. With Tai Chi, using yin-yang philosophy, we learn that this constant transformation allows us to be flexible in our poles, and we become three-dimensional. So not only are we forwards, backwards, we're side to side, we're this way, we're growing outwards, our energy comes up, it comes down, it swirls around. So Tai Chi is the tool that we use to become more flexible, not only in our body, but in our mind and our spirit also. How that connects to WuJi, WuJi literally means without rigid poles. So WuJi philosophy states that we understand yin-yang transformation, we use the tool of Tai Chi to become WuJi without rigid poles. And that is an idea where we're not thinking yet not dreaming. And I guess what that means, we're able to think, but when we're doing our daily activities, a lot of times things become automatic for us. And when we get into doing something that becomes automatic, autonomous, we're able to do it a lot more efficiently and effectively. So, for example, when you're driving, if you've driven to the store 100 times, you can basically drive to the store without using a whole lot of energy to do it. You can basically, my mom always used to say that her car would drive herself. It was actually her driving it, but she had driven it so much, she understood the principles of everything that you have to do at driving, that basically she could just drive to the store without thinking about it, without expending a lot of energy. So WuJi, without rigid poles, that's more than just a posture. It's a mindset that you can be flexible with. Try not to be too polar, try not to be yes or no. Find the truth in the middle. So yin-yang is transformation. Tai Chi is the exercise that we do to get to a WuJi state of mind. So with that being said, in my first episode of standing meditation, and with standing meditation, you can have your hands in any position that you want. For me, if you're a beginner and you're just starting out, I like my hands in this position. Some people like to turn their hands slightly like this so that they're facing each other. Some people like to have their arms up. I think that will be a later episode, and as your practice develops, we can work with standing, holding our arms like that. It's a little bit harder because we do have to relax those shoulders and do all of our key principles. But just a quick reminder of what I talked about in Standing Meditation Episode 1. We have our feet shoulder width apart. We have our weight equal on both of our feet, 50% here, 50% here. On the foot bottom, you got those three key points that I talked about. Heel, ball of the foot, and outer foot. When you connect those three contact points, you eventually work towards centering your weight in the middle of your foot near the bubbling wellspring. So just starting out, be aware, do you have weight in your heel, in the ball of your foot, on the outside of your foot? Just start to be aware of that. Working our way up, the ankles are soft, knees are soft, there's a slight bend in there. Our hips are slightly sunk just a little bit, there's a little bend in there. Most of your weight bearing should be in your hips area. I found with beginners, they like to put all their pressure in their knees to hold their weight up. Eventually, we have to work towards centering the weight here in our hips. Now, looking at the back, tailbone tucks slightly. That flattens out the lower back. And what that does is extends your spine downwards, open up those vertebrae. Moving up the spine, one thing that I haven't really talked much about is the green gate or the jade gate. The jade gate is the area between your shoulder blades that signals have to get through to be able to circulate your energy most efficiently. And when it comes to martial arts, punching, striking, we have to learn how to transmit the power from our foot bottom, through the leg, up through the spine, out through our shoulder blade here. And so when you're punching, you're learning how to loosen up your jade gate, when you're able to loosen up that jade gate, you're able to transmit power into striking or whatever you want to transmit that power into. But jade gate, green gate, that's a huge idea that I'll talk about more later. Moving up to the shoulders, the way that we get that head top elevated is we relax our shoulders. Drop those shoulders. That allows the muscles in your neck to relax. It allows your head top to elevate. The other key principle here, we got the space in our armpits. And then moving down the arm, we got our Tai Chi wrists, where we have, this is nice and open here. You don't want to be too down like that, side to side. You want that neutral position, Tai Chi wrist. You open up this area here, the dragon's mouth. That's great for opening up and circulating your oxygen, all your chemicals to your capillaries, and then back to your heart and lungs. So, standing meditation episode 2, this is what we're going to do. The V position standing meditation. So, this is different than here where you have your weight centered under your heels. This V position, your heels are touching each other. Your heels are touching each other. Your feet are kind of at 45-degree angles. The knees are not as bent as they were in WuJi posture. In WuJi posture, there's a little bend there. Here, this is almost more straight up, a lot more straight up. And some people may feel a lot more balanced. You got your hands at your side here. Keep all those principles of keeping your spine open, your head top elevated, relax those shoulders. But the only difference between this and episode 1 standing meditation is we got our feet together. Heels are touching, toes are at 45-degree angles, hands are at our sides here. And in some Tai Chi forms teach that this as a preparation or getting ready stance. You're getting ready to start your Tai Chi form. And you can do this at the beginning, in the middle, at the end of your practice. It doesn't have to be right before the form. I know when I'm at the point where when I practice, I don't necessarily do a set form. It's more, I'm just doing the movements that come naturally to me, the movements that I've practiced. So no two of my practices ever look alike. No two of my forms are exactly alike because I'm always doing what we call a free form. But if you're a beginner, when I first started, I started with those rigid forms and tried to follow that exact format. Once you learn that and get a good understanding, you could break out of that form and get free from mechanical conditioning and be freer within yourself, freer within your practice, your teaching, and in life. The idea of being confined to one particular practice really makes me nauseous. And I don't mean any disrespect to anyone out there who's doing a set form every day. I was at that point one day, but then I kind of broke out of it due to some interactions with master martial artists, and I became up with this whole philosophy of being free from mechanical conditioning. So, with that being said, one more time, this is the standing meditation. If you're new, it's good to start with this for a minute or two. You'd be surprised how hard it is to actually stand for 5 minutes still if you're a beginner. I noticed my son, when he first started standing meditation, he could not stand still for a minute. And, granted, he is a teenager, but he does have a pretty well-disciplined mind. What we're trying to do with these standing meditations is we're trying to, not only is it a good weight-bearing exercise, you're strengthening your muscles by doing this, you're also learning balance, how to center yourself, and how to be without rigid poles. WuJi philosophy. You can become more flexible. Now, even though this posture is standing straight up and down, we're learning what that means. So then we can use that idea of what a rigid pole is and then bend that rigid pole so you don't have rigid poles. You're WuJi. So you could do this, like I said, if you're a beginner, start out 1 to 2 minutes. Make sure that when you're doing this, you're aware of your breath. You don't want to be holding your breath. And I know as a minute or two goes by, you start to get restless. The mind starts to wander. through regular practice, you can teach yourself how to get all the great benefits of these standing meditations. So I really hope this video was helpful to everyone. Thank you for your feedback. I'm happy to be able to do standing meditation episode 2, and I hope that we can keep building and keep progressing so that your practice can become a WuJi mind, and you can be free of those rigid poles, those rigid forms, be free from mechanical conditioning, and learn about the path of least resistance. When you start to go down the path of least resistance as water does, you really start to be able to put your focus on things that are helpful, healthy, beneficial, not only for you, but for all those around you. So thank you so much. I'm Scott Krueger with Way of Water Arts. Please subscribe, please comment, please like. Everything is going so great with the YouTube channel right now, and I really want to be able to continue that, so your feedback is so invaluable to me. So thank you very much. Annyeonghaseyo. Inshallah. Goodbye.